You know what to do? Bam, bam, padam, 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 bam, padam, bam, padam, bam, bam, padam, padam, bam, padam. I know some of you wouldn't believe me, but if a lie asked my good friend Mackie, it was a big lying competition to see who the will crown as lion champion. Lions from all parts of the West Indies, big shot lions from all them foreign countries. From a feel about 1,000 or so entry in 2 days, he boiled down and leave just 3. I had me eye on Lion the Lion, because I know he does come with some good ones. But they had a younger fella named Debo, come from some village here in Tobago. He say his father is Tobago's best fisherman. Catch a fish a mile wide, 80 feet in span. He had to tighten the boat and swim back to land to get the brother Eric to give him a hand. You hear lie? That is lie. Lie. You hear lie?
Teacher Percy said if you tell a lie, you're going to hell as soon as you die.
Yeah. Liar the lion, he laughed till he sweat. He said, Mr. Debo, I say nothing yet. If you really want to hear about fishing, let me blow your mind. Now listen to something. When you're talking about fish, you just hit this spot. I was hoping you did, believe it or not. The fish your father caught, to you it was great, but the them small fish my father does use for bait. Lion went ahead on points in the show, complete eliminated Mr. Debo. The next man to beat was Willie Outrageous. He asked the judges if he could lie first. The judges asked Lion. The Lion agreed. Say any topic we'll pick is all right with me. He outrageous as from. Then we meet head on, and when we done see you, it to wear the crown. You hear lie?
That is lie. Lie. You hear lie?
Teacher Percy
say if you tell a lie, you're going to hell as soon as you die.
The outrageous said he knew a tailor come to make him suit. The man is a master. If you show him a man going around a corner, he could make him a suit and don't even measure. I'm talking about suit, sitting down correct, expertly made and fitting perfect. He used to sew for Shakespeare next suit for Hamlet, and up to this day, he yet make a mistake yet. You know the crowd went wild. They couldn't cool down. I say lion, the lion losing the crowd. The judges brought the crowd back to order and asked the lion to lie about the tailor. He said, my man is the best. Rolf is his name. Cotton cloth, making suit is his game. Don't show him the man. My tailor is class. They show him the corner where the fella pass and he gonna make a suit at his tailor. You hear lie? King liar.
Teacher Percy said if you tell a lie, you're going to hell as soon as you die.
Wait, sir. That is lie.
Teacher Percy said if you tell a lie, you're going to hell as soon as you die.
Yeah, man.
And
A very good evening to you, and welcome to Politics 101 on a Thursday evening. Lord Nelson there, King Lear. We all grew up with King Lear. Can be any of you who don't know King Lear. King Lear, and of course, appropriate for our times in Guyana. Lies, and more lies. Tonight, we are going to be talking about that issue that we began to talk about last night. What's happening at GCOM? Vincent Alexander wrote a letter pointing out some fears that he has about what's happening at GCOM as we prepare for upcoming elections. And Mouta preke. No teacher Jad say, by Mouta run. You have to wear bib. Mouta Prepper, the Attorney General, responded to Vincent. And it opened a whole can of worms. And tonight, we are going to delve into that. Vincent Alexander is here. Vincent is here, ready to go. Oh boy. Good evening to all of you, and welcome to today's edition, Thursday night, Politics 101, responding to the lies. Responding to the lies. We started to talk about it last night, and we are going to continue tonight. Wherever you're joining us from, whether you're joining us from the United States, whether you're joining us from Canada, whether you're joining us from the wider Caribbean, welcome to Politics 101. Welcome to Politics 101. Those of you joining us from inside of Guyana, welcome to Politics 101. What a show we had last night. And we are continuing tonight. We showed you Jack Deo. We showed you him last night. And we want to know who is who. Who telling the truth? Who lying? That's what we want to know. But we're going to break it down here tonight.
He said issues such as power outages or a system trip go through an election.
All right, here we go.
Declaring that the current electoral system has little room for error, Attorney General Nandlall has again shut down a suggestion by opposition-nominated commissioner at GCOM, Vincent Alexander, and the opposition for there to be a biometric system for voting, as well as a clean voters list before the next general and regional elections. During his weekly broadcast, Issues in the News, Mr. Nandlall said while he welcomes the use of technology, he does not believe that Guyana is ready for voting using those methods. He said issues such as power outages or a system trip go through an election into turmoil.
If I go and I put my finger on the machine, and for whatever reason the machine malfunctions, you're telling me that I will be denied my right to vote? You are telling me that I will be denied my right to vote? that is what I am not opposed to any form of technology. But the manual system is working. Why you want to resort to technology where things can go wrong in a country like Guyana?
In a letter to the press yesterday, GCOM Commissioner Vincent Alexander put forward the view that digital fingerprint identification at the place of poll provides a universally accepted and used mechanism that would prevent voter impersonation. Mr. Alexander said fingerprints are not forgeable. Digitally capturing those prints will not be sub-quality, as may occur in the instance of some manually captured prints. He said faulty fingerprints are rejected by the software when the prints are being captured digitally. Hence the rationale for and the benefit of capturing fingerprints digitally in the registration process. But Mr. Nandlall brushed aside the contention of Mr. Alexander.
This is a bizarre contention. How is it possible for a ballot to be cast for in the name of a person who is not present? It means that someone purported to be the person whose name is on the list. How is that possible, having regard to all the mechanisms that were present and in place at the polling place?
But the Attorney General also said the issue of the voters list has been canvassed and noted that the list has been used in previous elections without any issues, according to him.
Well, are you here? You are here, Nandlall. He said if you use electronics, then blackout can cause a problem. Well, me last night, without batting an eyelid, me said, well, where you get generator for? if you have no confidence in your electricity, your energy system, in the fastest growing economy in the world, you admitting that election will come and you can't fix that. That in itself, it grows. But me, I say, are you get enough money to buy a generator and put it at the polling stations? You know, and he don't want the voters list because the same voters list they used before. But he's asking how in God's name, the electronic system gonna work? How we gonna prevent voter impersonation? Well, Vincent is going to answer those questions. But before Vincent answers those questions, a supporter of the coalition is going to give us some answers. Before I bring on Vincent, I want to bring on a supporter of the coalition to explain why a voters list is important, why biometrics is important, and how the thing does work.
Commissioners, we are going to argue for several changes at GCOM. First of all, we believe that Surge Valley does not have what it takes to deliver free and fair elections.
And this is since the last election?
Yes, we believe that he has succumbed to pressure, that he has allowed this institution to act in a partisan manner, and he is in charge. He can't put the blame on the chief elections officer. He's in charge of GCOM, and therefore the party has called for him to resign. But further to that, we need to make sure that the list is cleaned up so that people, the abuse that we had where when you had sympathetic presiding officers to the opposition, allowing people who should not have voted to vote because they had extra ballots for people who had migrated and were or are dead in the polling stations, that if you have a new clean list, that will minimize that happening because they would not have the ballots in the polling station. Secondly, we need enhanced biometrics, because when some presiding officers said, like we had some cases in Victoria, this is Mr. X, just looking at the photo, and the polling agent from the party sits across the room or is in a hostile area, is afraid to object, they allowed a number of people to vote who should not have voted. But if you have biometrics, enhanced biometrics outside of just a photo ID, it could minimize that happening. We're going to push for electronic voting. Now, you have a system where you can do both. You can vote in the machine, and then it gives you, when you finish voting with the machine with enhanced biometrics, it emits a small paper which shows a ballot, which shows how you voted, which you can then, like some systems have this method, which you can then put in the ballot box. So you have both systems. You can only access the voting through enhanced biometrics, like an iris scan, but you safeguard against presiding officers or anyone else acting capriciously and giving extra ballots out to people. But it's a dual system. It's both electronic and manual. That is paper trail.
Yes.
So we're going to be pushing for that. We have to ensure a fair system of hiring in GCOM, a fair system of hiring people, and that people who are affiliated with political parties do not work in GCOM, who have been openly partisan. There's several other things that we are going to pursue.
Well, Denise, please stop it. The man's name is not Bundari. The man's name is Dr. Barrett Jagdeo. Well, Nandlall said the thing can work. Jagdeo said the thing can work. He explained in detail how the thing gonna work. You hear a lie? Somebody's lying. It's either Jagdeo is lying or Nandlall a lie. Jagdeo said they don't want partisan people to work at GCOM. He said biometrics, he go in great detail, how electronic voting does work and so on. He said the list got to clean up. Nandlall said electronic voting can work. And they're not going to clean up the list because the list used for election before. Let me bring in Vincent. Vincent, good night.
Good evening, David.
Yeah, you're right by the Spanish people that say it's different. You know, buenas noches, and where's the other one? Noches is night.
Night.
Where's evening?
I'm not quite sure, but
yes,
I will say good night when the program is finished, and we no longer be meeting for the rest of the day.
Yes, you know, when I first came to this country, I then in the parking lot at work, and me see a white man passing. So I said, good night. He said, he watched me. He said, you're ready to go to bed? In this country, the son said good night when you're ready to go to bed. In Guyana's night setting, I would say good night. Vincent, but this is serious business here. You wrote a letter expressing fears about what's happening at GCOM and concern about the upcoming election. And that really opened up a firestorm. It led to a response from Attorney General Nandlall, and then our archivists they went and they dig up and find what Jack Deal said. Let's start by having you recap the points you made in your letter. What is it? What are the points you were making in your letter that got Mr. Nandlall going?
Essentially, in my letter, and for some time now, and that's important to note, for some time now, this is not something recent, I've been making the point that the elections 2020 provided for us to have the evidence that there is illicit voting. And that evidence came in the form of, in the first instance, the APNU AFC coming out of the recount, doing field work and identifying persons who were not in the country, who were ticked off in GCOM's records as having voted. Having done that, they then wrote to GCOM indicating that here were persons whose names were on record, GCOM's official records, having voted, but who were out of the country, and therefore they were objecting to these persons these votes being counted. What GCOM did in the first instance was to send those records to the chief immigration officer, requesting a verification as to whether those persons were in or out of the country. It should be noted, GCOM did not send all of the records, all of the allegations. They just sent a few in the first instance. The chief immigration officer responded, indicating that they had verified that at least 75% in each instance of the persons that APNU AFC claimed were voted for, that those persons were out of the country. So there's a verification that took place by a person who is authorized to do something of that sort. And I'll tell you why the person is authorized. We have a National Registration Act, and that act has regulations. Regulation 40 specifies that the chief immigration officer should periodically send it to the commissioner of elections, of registration, a listing of persons who have been out of the country for a prolonged period. So the law provides for that to be done. The law then goes on to say that the chief registration officer, the commissioner of registration, can then make decisions as to how those names will be dealt with in the context of our voters list. So that the authorized person was written to and responded saying 75% by name of those persons were not in the country. Now, this response came whilst the recount was in progress. And what occurred was that GCOM then did not send the rest of the list. They were withheld. And similarly, this information which we had received was not communicated to the observers. So we have the CARICOM report which says they have no such knowledge. But that is true. They have no such knowledge because the information was not fed to them. And the rest of the list were not sent for verification. But what was sent provided evidence of what occurred. That is, persons who were not in the country, and I'm not addressing the dead now, in the local dead, persons who were not in the country were voted for. Now, in that context, we called for GCOM to do a review of the elections, to identify areas that needed attention. The chairperson and the PPP commissioners refused to have that review done. And in fact, when specific reference was made to the information that had been uncovered, the chairperson said that's a matter for a petition. And she repeated that a few days ago, because I raised the matter again. She repeated it was a matter for the petition. I said to her, it can be a matter for a petition because the person who did the verification is authorized by law to do so. So you don't have to go and get the court to say this thing is correct. The law, the regulation says this person can do so. And in any instance, our complaint was not about a petition. Our complaint was about seeing what flaws there are in the system and how those flaws can be rectified to ensure that GCOM fulfills its constitutional mandate to deliver free and fair elections. Interestingly, sometime, I think it was last year or the year before, the said Nandlall wrote GCOM asking GCOM to hand over all of the other documents with the alleged persons who were out of the country. Nandlall did that. And he did that and told the public he was doing it because he was going to verify and prove that those persons were in the country and that the APNU AFC was up to mischief. It's approximately 2 years now, and he has gone patently silent on this matter. And in fact, when I confronted him a few weeks ago on the matter, he said he doesn't have them. In other words, he's suggesting information is somewhere else. But the fact of the matter is, he is the one who retrieved them. And he is the one who promised the nation that they would be checked and the case of the PNC, the AFC, the APNU AFC would be proven wrong because it would be proven that those persons were in the country. When I raised the matter at GCOM a few days ago, another commissioner said, well, there are lots of people who came forward and said they were in the country, so we can't rely on that information. And I had to say to him that when the chief immigration officer responded, he went through the entire list. And in each of those lists, he verified at least 75% of the people were in the country. So for one or two persons to come forward and say, I was in the country, does not in any way nullify the veracity of our argument, because he said at the same time that 75% of the people were in the country. It's on that basis, David, that I enhance my argument on biometrics, because the biometric argument predates this. It predates this. It's a Jagdeo argument, it's our argument. But it enhanced my argument because my contention was, and is, if there's a rule in the court which says we cannot remove people's name from the register of registrants, and consequentially those names can find themselves onto the voters list, so we can't remove names from the voters list once people have been registered. But we have evidence that people on that list have been voted for through the active impersonation. Then we have to find some other mechanism to ensure that impersonation does not take place. And that other mechanism has to be a mechanism other than the current so-called mechanisms, because the fact that we have verified people who voted meant the current mechanisms did not work. And Jagdeo himself argued that. He argued that the current mechanisms did not work when he was calling for biometrics. And so, like him, I argued that if you have biometrics, then even if you have a list that is flawed, referred to very often as the bloated list, people who come to vote cannot get past the system if there is a biometric electronic mechanism to say those fingerprints that you have placed on this machine are those of someone other than yourself, and therefore you are not the eligible voter. And in that way, we'll be able to eliminate impersonation that evidentially occurred in 2020. David, I have always argued, I had a long discussion with one Jerry Gavaya before the elections, where he argued then of the perfection of the mechanisms. And I said to Jerry then, I said, Jerry, the issue is not the mechanisms. The issue is the human factor. Jaggio has argued the same thing. The issue is the human factor. He said that they were presiding officers who were sympathetic to the PNC, and they allow people to vote who weren't entitled to vote. And that was my argument, the human factor. And the fact of the matter is, in 2011, I think it was, we had this occurrence that was determined at the place of poll in Eccles. And the returning officer had to be removed. And if I'm not mistaken, either 2020 or 2015, we had a reoccurrence in quarantine. So we are not speculating. We are not involved in conjecture. We are dealing with concrete evidence of the fact that people who are not entitled to vote or who are not present to cast their vote have been voted for. And therefore, there is need for a mechanism, and a universally accepted mechanism is biometrics. Jaglio talked about the iris. I refer to fingerprints. And Nandlall has said a lot of trash. He said, for example, that we may have a failure of the power system. Jaglio talked about these machines. Do you know those machines don't necessarily link up to GPL? Each of those machines have a power pack. Each has a power pack. And in fact, those machines do not allow for the system to be online, because a system online can be tampered with. What the machines are allowed for is for you to download the fingerprints for the specific polling station on that machine, and for it to be checked. And there's a power pack that ensures we don't have to rely on GPL. So there's a lot of things being said that are not real, that are lies, that are revisionistic. Bearing in mind that in 2018, the budget was passed providing for house-to-house registration so we could have a clean list. Budget was passed, 100%. Everybody agreed in GCOM and in the parliament. The exercise started. But once they got to the point of the confusion in parliament and the no confidence motion, they wanted to rush to this election, and they backed off from things that they had argued for, biometrics, a clean list, etc. But obviously embarked on another exercise because the election showed that there were votes cast for persons who were not present. But that is not the only issue that I raised, and that exposes the lies of Nandlall. I raised the issue of the ballots on the East Coast, which at the time of the recount could not be verified to be valid ballots because the accompanying documents could not be found.
Vincent, hold a second, because somebody asked me last night. There were no documents in these boxes, 47 boxes.
Correct.
Right. And the person asked me, how does that violate the law, the rules of GCOM? How does absence of statutory documents in boxes a violation of the rules of GCOM?
It's a violation from two perspectives. First of all, the statutory documents.
Yes.
And our regulations specify that those documents should be turned in because they provide us with the opportunity, if the need arises, to do an audit of what occurred. So that's the first reason. Is they're statutory, they're supposed to be in. Secondly, and again, let me go back to Nandlall. Nandlall told in his diatribe, he said that when we counted the votes, we checked these people against those documents. He said that. The fact of the matter is, when the votes are counted in the first instance, all you do is to check the numbers. You don't check no names. You can't check names, because to check a name against a ballot is to interfere with the privacy and confidentiality of the ballot.
Yes.
So that was a contrived statement. What we do, we check the number of names that are crossed off, and we check the number of ballots, and we say, well, the number of ballots correspond with the record of the number of people who came to vote. But what occurred is that we had a recount. And in the order for the recount, we said we will now check to correspond the number of ballots, again, with the number crossed off to see if they correspond. And indeed, they did correspond. But what the APNU AFC did is to do field work. Which could not have been done for the counting at elections.
No.
They did field work. And they came back and said in the recount process that yes, these numbers correspond, the number of ballots correspond with the number of votes cast. But on the lists where the names were crossed off, we now have evidence that they were persons who were not in the country. And so it will be making an allegation. So the APNU AFC made an allegation and asked GCOM to do a verification. The chairman of GCOM sent these documents to be verified, and they were verified. So when Nandlall said the other day that I have no shred of evidence, again, that's a manufactured lie, because the GCOM has, and I have, the documents returned from the chief immigration officer showing the verification, and that verification could not have been done at the first count. It only became possible in the recount. That's when it became possible. And one has to wonder, one, why all weren't sent by the chairperson in the first instance. She only sent some and stopped sending. Two, why she did not inform the CARICOM people that she received these returns and have Nandlall saying the CARICOM don't know. And why is it that she refused to be a party to a review of the system where we could have said, why has this occurred? And has now argued that those documents are only relevant if you have a petition. When we're not raising the question of petition, that's with the political parties. We, the commissioners, are raising the question of GCOM's system, and a review would reveal the information which she has, and therefore point to the fact that our systems were flawed in some way, or were penetrated in some way, and therefore there's more work to be done. And in our view, the more work to be done includes utilization of biometrics in the face of the argument that we can't take names off the list. Use biometrics to make sure that those names which are on the list of persons who are not present are not voted for. One other factor, David, there could be no argument that there aren't names on the list which should not be there. There can be no such argument. For some simple reason. The law provides for all Guyanese who registered from 2008 to present who qualify to be in the list, to be on the list. All. Our systems provide for some information of the local dead so we can take them off the list. But there's absolutely no mechanism in place to take off the overseas dead. And so all Guyanese who were registered 2008 to present, who died overseas, their names are on the list. And it's those names that one may conclude that were used for the impersonation, the impersonating dead people, particularly those who are overseas. And any argument about the system being perfect can be trashed and rubbished. Because whilst we have worked to put a good system in place, the evidence has suggested, have proven that the system has not worked. And all the political actors, Jagdio in the first instance, as you correctly played here tonight, and other political actors in subsequent instances have identified that the human factor is the factor at play. And therefore you need to remove the decision making out of the hands of the human. And you can use technologies so that those decisions can be decisions that don't depend on the subjective intervention of the human being.
Vincent Alexander here tonight, clarifying so much for us. So much for us. I did not know of the Echo story and the story upon the quarantine. And last night when this person asked me, how is the absence of statutory documents a violation of the law? I did say it's statutory, which means it's supposed to be in there. And that is a violation. And Vincent points to the other important factor. And that is when you count that's what it is called, preliminary, learning, right? You just add up what cross out and make sure what cross out corresponds with what in the box.
Numbers.
Numbers. You're not looking for document. You're looking for document. Somebody had to take out those documents. Somebody had to take out those documents. Vincent, on election day, they accredit me, and I was responsible for Buxton and moving around from Wanripogo right back to Bachelor's Adventure. And I was taking a polling agent, one of AP and UFC polling agent, into Wanripogo. Because we had no polling agent at a particular station, and I was going there. In the car with me was my friend. He's now dead. And a security. They had gotten some security that day, and they sent a security guy with me. As I was going into Wanripogo, I hear this commotion. And people tell me the line, people voting, going there, that line. So I said, well, I'm going in to carry. As I am going in, Nandlall is there with a boy. And Nandlall saw me. And he said, look, Dr. Hines, he's a decent man. Let me talk to him. The security man that was me didn't want me to go out. But I came out the car, I go out, Nandlall bring the boy. He said, Dr. Hines, this boy, they say he go back to vote more than one time. And they call Amna Ali and Basil Williams. And they come down here and they created a storm. And I tried to see if I can get them to fix the matter, but they didn't fix the matter. However, I'm asking you, as a decent APNU AFC man, to talk to Amna and Basil and tell them it's a mistake the buy make, but that we can settle it at the party level. Right? Nandlall. And I'm prepared to go to court and give that evidence. The two guys with me, I know, I saying to myself, if it was one of them young people with me that they don't take that thing out long time and tape it. But the two big boys been with me, two big man. So they didn't have the presence of mind. But I am prepared to go and give evidence to go because it happened in front of a whole set of people. The second thing is that we got a call at the base in Buxton to say that there were some men in front of Strathspey Primary School sharing out ID card to people who are going in. And they send me on the case. I go down there. They rang to send me because the men in the minibus spot me and recognize me and they speed off. However, I went in And as I'm going in, it's Strathspey thing. They got about 3 or 4, 5 different polling booths in there at the school. And a lady pointed out to me. She said, go in there. She signaled to me. She said, go in there. And that is where they will do the thing. And so I went into that polling booth. And I said, I'm here. I showed them my accreditation. I said, I'm here because I got word that people are voting several times in here. The person who was in charge, who looked to me like a PPP supporter, said, Dr. Hines, I see no evidence of that. While I'm in there, our polling agent is on the phone. It's a young person. She was on her phone. So I asked her, I said, did you see any multiple voting? And she was at a loss, little 18, 19-year-old girl, right? And as I am going out, 2 other people who could not be our supporters pulled me aside and said, it's true. They were sharing out thing. One of them said, they offer me an ID card. And I said, I go in and vote for myself. I'm voting for other people. I am prepared to go to court and to give evidence of those things that I experienced. And the security man is still alive. He was, on both instances, he was with me. And so the human factor,
that's the issue.
Go ahead.
No, I said the human factor is the issue. I myself ran the ward on election day, including these groups. When I got to one polling station, I think it was Lusignan, but Strathspey, I can tell you about Strathspey's history goes back to 2006. It's a regular station post. When I got to this polling station, the people outside were complaining that the voting taking long. Why did it take so long? So I went in and I asked the presiding officer, why are you taking so long? But the presiding officer said, I have to take long because many people are voting with affidavit of identity and not with ID cards. Now, that in itself is not a problem, but it raises a flag. What has happened to these people's ID cards? Why so many people don't have ID cards? Why they voting with affidavit of identity? And I developed a theoretical position to this matter in the context of knowing that there's impersonation taking place. The person who's impersonating obviously is also an eligible voter. So what do? You go to vote with an affidavit of identity. Because with the affidavit of identity, you will pass muster. You are who you are. When they ask you questions, you know your mommy name, you know your daddy name, you can vote legally. When you come back with an ID card, that is where the system is penetrated. But the fact of the matter is, David, notwithstanding all those people in there, the first issue is that they have people in there who are prepared to facilitate wrongdoing. And I'm not taking party sides here. I'm not taking party sides. They might have people on all sides who want to facilitate wrong. Secondly, this thing Nandlall telling people on his program that the ID card is passed around, it's untrue. Those ID cards are raised almost at the door where you have the first person, GCOM person who has the list. They are raised, that person sees the ID card. Those other people see the ID card from about 10, 15, 20 feet away. So really the system does not provide for them to really identify, from a physical perspective, the person in front of them. What those polling clerks and those people do is to verify that the name of the person being called is indeed on the list. And they tend to settle for that. so that in that way, somebody who is not the right person gets past the system because routinely they really do not. Sometimes they talk with the folio. I have gone to polling stations where the folio was not distributed to polling agents. I've gone to polling stations where only one polling agent get the folio. I've gone to polling stations where they have it and they don't use it. So the human factor in various ways, whether it's in negligent behavior, whether it's in intentional malfeasance, is where the problem exists. That is where the problem exists, the human factor, both in terms of the person who come to impersonate somebody and in terms of the people in the polling station who may be friendly or in some instances scared. We have reports. People come to us and say, look, this is a court. We say, well, give us the evidence, write it down. They say, no, I live in a village where if I am known to be the person who go and give that evidence, that's the end of me physically. You become an Aziz, meaning the people whose house was burned down in West Berbice. You become an Aziz.
Mr. Aziz is on the program here tonight. He's a regular every night.
Right. Yes. So the human factor is the problem, and we have to get technologies to work around the human factor. And Jack Dio has correctly suggested the technologies that can be used. The system he's referring to is used in Venezuela, where you go, fingerprint. Without that, you're not allowed in to vote. But you don't yourself have to mark the ballot paper. The system prints off your ballot with your vote. When you go and cast your vote, and they cast the vote on a slate, you go, you see the face of the person you're voting for, you touch the face, and that registers the vote. And then the system prints a ballot, verifying that the one you touch is the one who's going to count for you. They then cast that ballot in a box. So at the end of the day, what happens is they just manipulate the system and it gives you a result. And that takes a few minutes. But they also count the cast ballots and then cross-check them to make sure that the result the electronic system gives you is the same as the cast ballot. So that's a control. Now you may ask the question, how could there be contentions in Venezuela if that's the system that they rig the elections? Well, theoretically, what can happen in Venezuela is this. They also transmit the results electronically. So in door time, the elections people have the results and declare them. And whilst they declare those results, the party's still running around to collect the SOPs. And therefore, by the time the party is ready to cross-check, the results are already declared. Another point I want to make, which Nandlall spoke to, he said that when he was saying how these people, somebody could vote who is not entitled to vote.
Right.
Because the name is there and the residency is there. What he did not say is that he, Nandlall, has taken to Parliament a change in the legislation in terms of the National Registration Act. And we are no longer required to verify the person at the place of residence. So the thing we say, again, is contrived. The system no longer requires you to verify the person at place of residence. All the system requires you to do is to verify that there is such an address. And we have already had instances where they go to those addresses and it's bush or the people in the neighborhood say nobody like that don't live here. So the accusation he made against the PNC about 68, where the ghost voting, well, we have registration that reflects that accusation. Because physical people come to register, yes. But when you go to verify the place of residence, it don't even exist. But the law now doesn't require that verification. So once somebody turn up, you could be registered. And let me add one other point to that. One other point. Manual fingerprints are not necessarily perfect. And there's no way at the point of registration that you can necessarily identify an imperfect manual fingerprint. It's not identified when you register. You see a print and that's it. But when you come to cross-match, which is an electronic exercise, sometimes they say we can't use that fingerprint because it is not a good fingerprint. And so they can't cross-match. And so that person could slip through because the cross-matching cannot identify that that person
Yes.
could slip through.
Yeah.
And so even with our present system of biometric cross-matching fingerprints, you can have people slipping through. That is not our major contention, because our major contention is that there are people being voted for, not the people who slip through. But that can occur. And that again justifies the need for capturing the fingerprints digitally. It's not talking about voting, place the poll, capturing them digitally. So you have perfectly captured fingerprints. So when you get the cross-matching, you can do 100% cross-matching and eliminate duplicates. And the fact of the matter is, we do find duplicates. So even with the imperfect system, we do find duplicates for various reasons. Somebody said they didn't know the register, they forget the register, and all sorts of things. But they end up registering another time. We do have that. And everything I say here tonight is evidential. Unlike that nonsense of Nandlall, who's saying they don't have any shred of evidence. Everything I have here is factual and evidential, and not some fantasy which says the system works and therefore nothing can happen. The system has flaws and things have happened. Nandlall is so disingenuous in his propaganda. You know how he started off that program? By telling the people that Alexander is an executive member of the People's National Congress Reform. That's how we start off. He knows I'm not. But why did he do that? He did that because what the PPP does is to use the PNC bug.
Yes, to scare Indians.
To use the PNC bug. Once it's PNC, the rigging since 68. So if Alexander is an executive member of the PNC, don't worry what I say after that. It's the rigor. It's the rigor. That's why he did that. To get into people's head that what he's going to speak about is about a man whose party, and who by virtue of being a part of that party, involved in rigging since 68, because he repeated all of that. Right? But the fact of the matter is, I have not been a member of the People's National Congress since 2007. I'm not apologizing.
I know it, and I'm not a PNC member.
I say it publicly all the time. I'm not apologizing for being a sympathizer or a voter for the PNC. But don't lie on me.
Do not.
Don't lie on me, and don't try to put me in a box that I'm not in.
Vincent had mentioned that you wanted to say something about StatsPay. Yes, in
2006. I think it was 2006 when I was involved as a political activist, or 2001, one of the 2 years, I can't remember. There was stage voting, the same ID card stage voting was taking place at StatsPay. One of them was bringing people in the bus and they're coming in and voting. We discerned that.
Yeah.
We complained to Voodoo about it. Voodoo says he will check it out. Voodoo went ahead and declares results without checking it out. 2001 or 2000, I think it's 2001. So this we do in 2001. 2006, he robbed AFC in Linden. 2011, he attempted to rob the country at GCOM. Now, 2011, he did something else. We sat and had a discussion in 2011 about whether party workers would get certificate of employment to vote with. Because not all the parties have resident people who can be their polling agents. And they have to bring people from another area. If somebody comes from another area, the person cannot vote unless he leaves his post to go and vote, which again opens up the system. In 2011, we were discussing this matter, and we instructed Boodoo not to give political workers certificates of employment. And he said, no, I haven't done that. I wouldn't do it. Election day at the Alexander Village Nursery School, a political activist came to me. And this had to be 2011 because by then I was a commissioner. Came to me and said how these PPP polling agents gone to vote. They're voting in the place of poll. They didn't have to go anywhere. And the reason why they were voting there is because they had certificates of employment. GCOM's decision was that they should not have certificates of employment. But here was clear evidence that Boodoo had given to the PPP certificates of employment for their people to vote at the place of poll. You know what I did? Norton was working Region 10. And I called him. So Norton, check what's going on in Region 10 in this matter. 50 certificates of employment had been issued to PPP people in Region 10.
Region 10, yeah.
Wickedness, and attempting to use the PNC bug to say that the PNC are natural riggers and that they, the PPP, are the ones who have clean hands.
Yeah.
Clean hands which did not allow for the 1961 by-election to take place in Houston. That's the cleanliness of the hands. Clean hands who issued certificates of employment. Clean hands who sought to present a fraudulent result in 2011. And all of this is evidential.
Yeah. You know, Vincent, I want to say two things. One of the things I found on the East Coast, in particular in Buxton, a number of people could not find their names at the polling stations. They were told they would be voting at X polling station in the village. They went there, couldn't find their names. And when we checked, these people's names appeared to vote at polling stations in places like Enterprise and so on. A lot of people. And there were these two particular young brother and sister. They said they're voting for first time and they want to vote. Tears in their eyes. We found that they were slated to vote in Enterprise. And nobody wanted to go into Enterprise to carry them. Eventually they said, David, anybody can go, is you. So my security man and the security man, the two young people. When we got to Enterprise, it's still at the back of Enterprise in a ball field. You have a tent. When I go in the tent, nobody in there except the workers. We didn't have a polling agent there. All you have there are PPP people and so on. And when I show up there, they jump because they're busy doing the thing. The two young people, they go in, they vote, and they left. One of the workers pulled me aside and said, well, you know, it's slow in here, Dr. Hines, and I just playing patience on my card. It's nothing we were doing. I said, I didn't accuse all you of doing anything. And there were several other people who were stated to vote to the back there. And even when I volunteered to take them, they said, me not go Enterprise. And so they were disenfranchised. There was an incident at the polling station in Buxton. They called me and said, somebody turned up to vote proxy for their mother. And the polling agent, who is a villager, prevented them. and big story and blah, 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 blah. The people cussing in the village. So they said, David, you got to go down. I go down at the back. I knew right away because I knew the person involved and I knew that she was following the rules, that the person did not turn up with the proper documentation. When I went there, I asked her, I said, what am? She said, well, the person turned up and said they vote for the but then bring the proper documentation. So all I said, you cannot vote here. You have to go back home and get the proper documentation. And the person said the documentation home, but they ain't able to go. And it's Buxton we there, and you should let me vote without the proper documentation. And I had to turn to the crowd and to say, she is following the rules. If you want to go back, me and give you a drop home for go and get the documentation. But don't force her to break the rules. She is following the rules. I say that to say that the same people that I say Stephen people, that incident there showed that a lot of APNU, AFC people who work follow the rules. Follow the rules. So I just want to point out those two things. Up to now, as I always say on this program, I have not heard one accusation of malpractice at the polling stations by APNU, AFC people lodged by the PPP. All you hear them is that Mingo attempt to rig. You want to hear them talk about multiple voting in black villages. Because I know in the places that I worked there on these courts, it didn't happen. Those people did not engage in. That lady could have said, all right, come and vote. But she said, no, it's against the rules. And so go back home, get the document and come. Your comments.
I had not the same issue, but the same disposition at the back school, where the voting GCOM officials were turning back people saying they were improperly dressed. That happened at the back school. Turning back people saying they're improperly dressed. And one would think, from an ethic perspective, that these are APNU, AFC people. They're turning back the voters in the area that is largely an AFC, APNU, AFC catchment. Go home, you can't vote here because you're improperly dressed. You know, what it brings out, all of this brings out, that the major issue we face with is the human factor.
Mm-hmm.
And that whatever occurs is the manipulation through the human factor by those who want to cheat. That is what happens.
Yes.
We use the human factor, which is the weak point in our system. And therefore, it begs the question of the greater use of technology to eliminate the human factor.
Vincent, address the question of, and Jack, you addressed this also, and you have addressed it. And I want you to talk a little bit about it. This issue of people, those who are hired at GCOM, and the risk that we face at the upcoming election.
Let me answer the question this way. Guyana is a politically fractured society. Indians mostly vote for the PPP. Blacks mostly vote for the PNC. We have to hire people from this same fractured community. We try to say that we will not hire people who are known political activists. But they are sleepers. They're sleepers. And so that you cannot guarantee that you haven't hired persons who are not sympathetic. And the extent to which you take people from the community to work in those polling stations, the extent to which there must be a margin by which some of those people, I don't know the percentage, are sympathetic to one or the other party. And therefore, if given a chance, may do things in the interest of the parties. And what has occurred, for example, in Eccles and in Quarantine, suggests that these things are done.
Mm-hmm.
Suggests that these things are done. And so GCOM has to really try its best to avoid that. And the parties have to try their best to have the kind of polling agents that could oversee these people. But again, technology will eliminate those people in terms of their efforts. But for me, David, the greater concern is the leadership of GCOM. The leadership of GCOM. And what has happened in GCOM post-2020 has been a concerted effort to replace the people who are there with people who are chosen by the PPP. Listen to my words carefully. People who are chosen by the PPP. The first one was the CEO. And incidentally, from a historical perspective, the CEO may have been an activist in Metamesa. First one that chose. He did not have the required years of experience for the job. They contrived and said that because he used to scribe and he used to be nearby and because he had projects, that is the years of experience. The DCO did not have the years of experience. In fact, in the DCO's case, they kept postponing the appointment of the DCO as he accumulated the years of experience. But eventually, they couldn't postpone it any longer. But what did they do? They ignored the fact that mandatory you should have certain experience and appointed him against someone who had the years of experience and the qualifications. And this has been the pattern. GCOM under Scores Bally used to have a score sheet and we would collate the scores to determine the best. That is flawed, obviously. In one instance, somebody got 100 marks, for something other than qualifications, which is very unlikely.
Right.
But at least we had
a system.
We are still given score sheets, but we are told we're not using score sheets. You could do your writing in the score sheet, and when you come, we can have a discussion, and then we can vote. You can vote. And every job, from the CEO to recently, is a 4-3 vote after the discussions. And I can identify in every instance that if we were to use score sheets and to differentiate the people by score sheets, the people who have been given the jobs could not get the jobs. How do you explain that somebody has been the incumbent, but because of administrative reasons, the person was out of the job and is now reapplied? The person had a good appraisal. The person got the qualifications. The person did the job before, national elections, local government elections. And you give now somebody else the job, and the only argument you have is that because of the person's experience in local government elections. When the person who you're knocking out, been there for years, got experience in national, general and regional, and in local government. But you're giving somebody else the job. Because I like how they did the interview. And they have experience with local government elections. And the same for the other position which we have employed people for. Same for the other position. I'm not pointing my finger at the people who have been employed. I point my finger at the manner in which they have been employed. And the manner in which persons who were by far more eligible were not employed. Because GCOM has come down to a system of voting. It doesn't matter how well you perform, doesn't matter whether you meet all the criteria or not. At the end of the day, it's a vote. is a vote. We do not use score sheets. GCOM has refused. We are conscious of the nature of GCOM, its political being. We therefore recommended that GCOM could engage a professional panel of interviewers and take us out the picture. So the PPP and the PNC can rig the process. Take out the picture. They refused it.
They refused that. I know you made that recommendation. Yeah.
They refused it. They argued that they have a constitutional responsibility and they can't delegate it to anybody else. The fact of the matter is there's absolutely nothing wrong if we set a set of people, do these interviews and give us a report. We may even be able to vary what they come up with because we have the final decision. They refuse that.
You all want outsourcing the decision making. You were outsourcing the process. At the end of the day, you all have to make the decision.
The final decision, yes.
And that is where the constitutional thing come in.
Yes.
But I tell you.
You refuse.
Yeah. Vincent Alexander. Vincent, is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to get in tonight as we wind down?
Well, not really, because we got into the second element. Because there was another letter which I wrote, which they'll probably respond to, where I said that GCOM has embarked on the capture, the PPP is embarked on the capture of GCOM. And that capture has to do not only with the way in which, at the lower level, the CU has a free hand to determine who's appointed and who's promoted and things like that. That CU has a free hand. But at the upper level, given the way the commission is operating, with a clear 4-3 disposition on almost every matter, then people of the PPP's choice are being placed in the higher echelons of GCOM. We had, for the question of the ACU, we advertised, got applicants, and then re-advertised and gave the job to a former employee under 4-3 vote, an employee who is well past the age of retirement was preferred to a younger qualified person in GCOM. They re-advertised to allow that person to apply, and then conducted the interviews, and on a 4-3 vote, gave that person a job. GCOM is under siege from the People's Progressive Party. They wish to point their fingers to other people, but they're under siege. And they have tremendous double standards. Voodoo did what he did, and they kept him in the job. He wasn't charged.
Yeah.
I don't know what Lowenfield did. I'd like to hear the court pronounce on what Lowenfield did. But he was taken out of the job and charged. Double standards.
Vincent Alexander here tonight, quite a program tonight, a lot of information. And as I always said, it's very important for us to get this kind of information because it empowers, because each of us must become an activist. And if you're going to be an effective activist, you have to get the thing done. This, they have what I call, in America here, that they're using the term now, high perspective vote and low perspective vote. I want all you all to become high perspective voters and activists because it is very important, and people are not going to pull wool over your eyes because we are entering a defining period in our history. Elections, oil money, power. Elections, oil money, power. You stir that up in a pot. We are entering a defining period. Vincent, thank you very much, my brother.
Thank you very much.
I know I call on you, and I cannot remember a time in 4 years that you have said no. And I want to thank you very much for giving us the information so that all of us can become high perspective activists. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
And to all of you, those of you in America, go out and vote. Tuesday, it coming. I don't want no reasoning and all that kind of thing. They throw the behind the thing. I want to hear what Kamala did do and she didn't do and all them story. No. All you go out and vote. Bishop asked me last night to predict. I said, I ain't predicting because it's a close election, but I want Kamala to win. I want Kamala to win. So all of y'all who are citizens in America, if you haven't voted yet, go out and vote. Make sure all of you picnic who born in America, they go out and vote and make our contribution. She's not the perfect candidate. No candidate is perfect. No candidate is perfect. But the imperfection of the other side must drive us to make Kamala perfect, to make her perfect. Go out and vote. Go out and vote. Go out and vote. I don't have to tell you all who to vote for. You all know how you all must vote, because you can make history in a progressive way with your vote, or you can make history in a regressive way with your vote. And your no vote is really tantamount to a vote for imperfection. Good night, and I'll see you all tomorrow night. Tomorrow night. I love you all, always, and we have to love you all, because we cannot do this without you. Burnham used to say, watch with me one more night. Watch with me one more night. And we are asking you all to walk with us another mile. We know the old song, "Oh Lady, walk a mile and a half." And we got a lot of mile and a half to walk. Walk with us one more mile. In order to get to where we want to go, we have to clear the way. Yangadona. You better clear the way, let she pass. And if you see Yangadona with your red, green, and gold, you better clear the way, let she pass. We have to clear the way, because we are the Yangadonas. And the election is the first step along the way. Clear the way, which means we have to clear the PPP out of the way. No disrespect. No disrespect to PPP supporters. People vote for who they want to vote for. And they must have logical reason for doing so. And the people who are voting for the PPP have logical reasons for doing so. But we still have to clear the PPP out of the way so we can begin the process of integrating our country and make our country a place where plurality must mean diversity and not inequity and inequality. There is room in the inn for all of us. There's room in Guyana for all of us. Chinese, Portuguese, Amerindian, Blacks, Indians, Hindus, Muslim, Christian, Faithists, all of us. Happy Diwali to our Hindu brethren and sisterin. The festival of light, the triumph of good over evil, must not mean the triumph of one race over another race. It must not mean the triumph of one religion over another religion. It must mean clearing the way of that which stands in the way of justice, clearing injustice out of the way so that justice stalks our land, clearing inequity out of the way so equitability raises its head in our country. We can do it. We've moved mountains before. The mighty slavery we've moved. We've moved colonialism out the way. And this challenge to our ultimate freedom will be moved out of the way. Walk with us one more mile. I'm paraphrasing Bornomir. Walk with us one more mile. I'll be back tomorrow night.